Hey everyone, now I want to talk to Mr. Mike Michalkow,
Hey.
the man himself. And Mike's been working in the scene for I don't even know how many years, but I know he's going to be able to share a lot of amazing insights into what it's like to play drums for a living.
For a living, I tell you, it's a living. It's definitely a living.
Thanks for
Good to
coming
see you.
over.
Thank you so much. This is
No
very
problem.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
going to be fun. And so, like I said, this isn't about how to be a drummer on a tour bus and make millions of dollars.
See, I don't know how to do that, so okay, that's a good thing.
This is, I really wanted to try and, give the viewers, give the students who are watching this a good indication of what it's like to do what the majority of drummers, professional drummers, to do what they do.
Right.
And I think the majority of people who make money for a living playing drums, they do what you do. Like you're in that scene where there's a lot of guys doing that, and a lot of guys having success, a lot of guys not having success. And so I think you've done a lot of things right, and you're doing a lot of things right. And so hopefully we can just chat about that.
I'd love to. That'd be great. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's just figure it out. How many years have you been playing professionally now?
22.
22.
I've been playing drums for 24 years.
Yeah.
And about 22, we'll say semi-professionally for maybe 5.
Yeah.
And then things started to take off sort of, after that 5-year period, after playing drums for about 7 years in total.
Yeah.
Things started to get busier where I didn't have to work as many, or a full-time job or as many part-time jobs to start paying the bills. So, it's like a snowball that goes down the mountain. It can either fall apart and crash, or it can keep building up momentum and building up and getting bigger and bigger. But that takes work. That's not something that just happens. Some people think, oh, it's great, it's just going to fall together for you, but it's a lot of work,
Yeah.
You got to meet lots of people. You got to meet tons of people, and you got to keep those connections strong. And keep in mind, that everybody you're going to meet is going to work out. Maybe that may not be your next meal ticket, working with certain musicians or certain producers, but you got to constantly keep meeting people in the industry that, to see where it goes. So patience is a big thing too. Yeah.
So why the drums?
Why the drums?
I've been intrigued with that question lately, because like, if you don't know why you're doing something, then why do it?
Exactly.
And so, I would, with everything we do, like in business and drumming, it's like, hey, if I'm going to practice double bass, why? What am I going to use that for? Like, so that's why I think, like, why do you play drums?
Because I love it. I mean, simply, it was something that I wanted to do when I was very, very young, and never really had the real opportunity to play. Like, when I was 5 years old, Mom and Dad bought me a little toy drum set from Sears, and I trashed it. And they thought, oh, he's just going to break all his toys, so we're not going to buy him another drum set. Lo and behold, when you're 5, you don't realize that you wanted to do that more. And I'd make little drum sets out of cardboard boxes and empty ice cream pails, and I'd take my mom's spatulas and I'd pull the handles off them. Those would be my drumsticks. And she wouldn't even realize. She'd be making a cake, all of a sudden the spatula the handles in the batter, and then she'd be like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, Mom, And it wasn't until I was 17 that I really had a chance as a young adult to say, I think I want to do this. And I thought I'd try it for real. I was kind of scared, to be honest. I was kind of scared to play drums because I didn't know what that meant. I didn't think I'd be any good, and I thought that, I would fail at it, because there was a lot of things that I tried as a teenager that, failed at or got hurt or whatever. And did lots of things and had injuries and things like that. So I thought, do I want to try drums? And it was just this love all of a sudden, kaboom. But I had some really good teachers off the beginning too, which is important, to encourage me and to help me with my career, subbing for them and doing things like that. So that was, but it's still, to this day, I love it. I absolutely love playing the drums. I don't know, it just doesn't change.
So endorsements, like what are you currently using? We can just quickly go through them.
Currently using Yamaha drums. Yamaha drums, been with them for a long time. Peisty cymbals, Evans drum heads, ProMark sticks, some of the smaller companies, Simpad, little Simpads, High Shaker, the foot shakers, Hansen foots, Blow It fans. There's a whole bunch of little ones, right? Always little things popping up, but the big ones are companies that I think some of the best products in the world for me, anyways.
Okay. So, tell me about the most exciting gig that you've ever had, and the most exciting show you've ever played.
The most exciting gig? Oh, jeez. I don't know. There's been so many. If I had to narrow it down, jeez.
Or just that, like, one highlight. Maybe it's not the best, but it's...
Honestly, I play in a Rush tribute band, and this is... I just reformed another Rush tribute band called Moving Pictures here in the Vancouver area. And when I was originally with R30, I mean, it's one thing to go out and do the blues gig and to do the rock gig and to do the funk gig, but when you're finally playing the music that I really loved and grew up with, and that's what I'm looking forward to when we start playing live again, is, you know, you're behind this massive drum set. It's like I'm behind, I'm in my house, behind this drum set, and you're seeing all these drummers air drumming and people singing the words, and just everybody's into it. As far as, you know, for what I did as a personal thing, probably the Rush tribute stuff is still a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to some other ones. I've worked with some pretty big stars too, but that can sometimes be intimidating because, you know, you can't screw up. You know, you don't want to screw up, and you know, there's a lot of pressure. I mean, those are great gigs, but there's a little more pressure. You know what I mean? So I don't want to put those into like, wow, those were the best, because those were maybe the best paying, but there was a lot of pressure. But for me, you know, a couple of these gigs that we did with R30, there was no money. We were doing it to raise money for the food bank or whatever it was, and I was just on such a high, I didn't want to stop playing. So probably, honestly, that, I mean, there's tons of other ones I could think of, but just recently in the last 5 years, I'd say.
Cool.
Playing with that, yeah.
Drumming highlights that you've had, like maybe not necessarily a gig, but drumming highlights. I know you've done clinics, I know you've done teaching things, many other videos. And
wow, yeah, there's a lot. But as far as drumming highlights, like meeting some of my favorite drummers, or getting to study with some of my favorite players, there's been so many. Like Ed Thigpen, one of my biggest memories of Ed Thigpen, the brush master, was doing a lesson in his hotel room in Nashville, Tennessee, back in '04, on his suitcase. His suitcase closed, and we were doing a brush lesson, and he didn't charge me anything. You know, it was lessons with Jim Chapin, like things like that, like getting a chance to meet these masters of the instrument and getting their knowledge, stories that Jim Chapin would tell us about, you know, Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, and it's just like, you know, meeting Buddy Rich's daughter, or things like that. There's just so many. There's so many. Jeez, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, more than half my life now, and it's like I can give you a long list, a long list of stuff that I've been doing.
Okay, so as far as playing shows, I know there's and there's a lot of problems that probably come up, and so I just want to talk a little bit about those, not to be negative, but just so we can maybe dissect
the reality. Call it reality.
The reality. Okay. The hardest thing about playing drums professionally, like the thing that you hate the most.
Hauling drums around, moving drums around. But we got to do it. That's the thing we have to do. We got to haul drums around. You know what's funny? It's actually rehearsing. I don't really like to rehearse unless we have to rehearse. You know, and I think a lot of guys can agree with me on that. If you know the music and the music is simple enough and everybody knows, like if it's a top 40 band, I sub for a lot of bands, and you know, they give you a set list. They say, here, you know, learn the tunes, download them off iTunes or get them off YouTube. You learn them, boom, you got them. Then you go, and if you got one guy saying, wow, we got to rehearse 5 times for the one gig. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. Come on, guys, let's, you know, let's just go and play.
Be professional and learn your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, show up prepared, right? I mean, it's one thing if someone's not learning their parts and all that, but absolutely, you know. But over-rehearsing, I guess, to me is like, really, because it just becomes like work, like digging a ditch deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's like, can we just go play, you know? I heard a great bass player once say, he goes, why rehearse when you can play? You know, so, you know, learn your stuff at home. I mean, because I love practicing, but especially when you get to rehearsals and guys aren't showing up, or, you know, I've been to rehearsals where you have to take time off from your regular schedule, life, family, whatever, and you get to the rehearsal and then 2 guys don't show up because of this reason and that reason. It's like, why am I here? So a 4-piece band is now a 2-piece band. Rehearsing, so silly things like that. Not to sound negative, but it's the reality, right? So those kind of things kind of irk me a little bit when that happens. But I try to put things into perspective and say, guys, can we all be there? And if it's a 6 o'clock rehearsal, let's be there at 10 to 6, and you know, and not waste anybody's time. Especially if you're paying for rehearsal space, that's when it gets a little frustrating. When you got to pay for the space and people aren't showing up or they're late. And, you know.
Worst gig you've ever played?
Oh.
I remember mine, so...
Worst gig I ever played? Probably on the cruise ships. When I used to work on the cruise ships, there was a band leader who just hated the bass player. They had something going on. And I was kind of in the middle, because you had the band leader who was a trumpet player, and the bass player was over here, and I'm literally in the middle of this, right? And a bass player, he was a very average player, so he wasn't the greatest bass player in the world. His reading was rough, and this was my first cruise ship gig, so I'd only been on the gig for about 2 weeks, and they were constantly yelling at each other and on stage, like literally in front of an audience, right? I mean, they would have when the curtain was closed, they'd have their beef, whatever it was. but on stage, and I remember one time the trumpet player, band leader, took his trumpet case and actually threw it at the bass player, like literally, and he threw his bass down and left the stage in the middle of the show. So to me, it's like it didn't happen to me personally, but it was a very awkward feeling because you could just feel the vibe of the crowd all of a sudden get kind of awkward. Yeah. And now I got no bass player, so I'm doing a show. It's like, and I'm looking at the keyboard player. Left-hand bass. Can you hang with that? He's like, I think so. And he kind of had to play it. So the music suffered after that. And then of course this guy got fired, and we were still at sea for 3 days before he can go back home. And so yeah, so the next 3 days were rough because there was no bass, and there was tension and that kind of stuff drives me nuts because I don't try to put myself into real negative situations when it comes to music. I try to find good, fun situations. I can share another story with you if you want. Sure. In the recording studio, especially back in the 90s, I was doing a lot of recording sessions. It was great. It's like there were so many studios that were hiring session players, and it was kind of like a progressive rock gig, but for this young band, and I guess their drummer couldn't play in time, so they had to bring in someone like me to come and fill the void and do the parts. And the bass player or the engineer didn't like my bass drum sound. I had a 20-inch bass. At that time, I only had a 20-inch bass drum, so that's something we can talk about later about gear. I only had one bass drum, and he didn't like the sound of it, so we were constantly changing the sound of it. And I'm thinking, if you're a top-end studio like you say you are, you should have some extra gear here, but they didn't. So I had a 20-inch bass drum, and it was just driving him nuts, the sound of this thing. And he was getting madder and madder and madder. And then we'd start playing, and he'd be like, yeah, I like the take, but I just hate the bass drum sound. I'm like, man, I was using that word hate, and it started to bug me a bit. And he just kept riding everybody, and then somebody else would screw up, and then this person screwed up. And one thing that I haven't done since, and I never will do again, I literally packed my stuff up and left. Wow. Yeah, this isn't worth it. Because it was so tense that everybody got tense. And, this guy was just losing his mind. And I mean, it started with, we finally got a good bass drum sound, I should have mentioned that, but then all of a sudden now everybody was tense in the room, and the music was suffering because we were trying to do live off the floor. Yeah. And I was doing some reading, and I had a chance, like a day to learn these tunes. Like there was 3 songs, and I didn't know the guys, and I felt bad, I didn't want to burn a bridge, but I just said, I can't do this. This is not working for me, so I packed my gear up and left. Didn't get paid, and it was okay. I was a little worried that it would end my career. It didn't, which is good. But sometimes I don't suggest it. I mean, Jeff Porcaro used to do that, I hear, but Jeff could get away with it because everybody loved Jeff. Everybody wanted to hire Jeff.
Yeah, that feel, man. That feel. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made in your career?
I don't make mistakes. The biggest mistake I've ever made. Okay, the first chance I ever had to rehearse with David Foster, I was so nervous. Okay, and I always say, and I tell my students this too. It's like you get one chance. You get one time to make a first impression. So I played with David, and we just rehearsed, and I kicked butt. It was like he got up and went yes, and I'm like, oh, and I got a yes from David Foster. So I was so excited. And backstage, I was busy doing some other stuff. I was actually teching on that gig as well, but I got to do the rehearsals. And Graham Lear, another drummer that played with Paul Anka, was going to sit down behind the drum kit. And this was my opportunity, as David actually walked up to me. He never does this. He usually does his own thing. He's got his entourage. And my question that I had was, how much time do I have to change over for Graham Lear's set on the same kit? Had to change the pedals, had to change the snare, had to change the cymbals. And David walked up to me and said, man, you play great. And right there, that would have been my opportunity to say, hire me full time. Yeah. You know what I said? Thank you. But how much time do I have to change Graham's kit? Like, I still kick myself for that because I was so concerned about my job at that time. I wasn't thinking about my future. I mean, I still do work with David, but not as much as I wish I would. I wish that I was one of the busier drummers with him. Yeah. But he doesn't compliment people, and I know that. I've been working with him for a long time, and I felt good because I don't think he really knew that I could read okay and that I could play his. But I also knew his tunes, right? So that was the thing. This rehearsal was easy for me because I knew the music. But I never did take that compliment and sort of expand on it. Yeah. It was like, okay, thanks, yeah, anyways, but how do I? So that was probably a mistake that I made, but it didn't end my career, of course, it just, maybe it didn't. push it further.
Let's get into just band dynamics and
Sure.
working with, because doing shows, you're working with people.
Yeah.
It's rarely that you'll get a gig as a drummer and just you on stage.
Yeah.
So working with many different personalities and stuff like that, it's going to be interesting.
It is.
And so is there a certain situation that you can tell without naming any names, obviously, how you saw something play out and how maybe it could have changed to be a more positive outcome? So like a negative thing with experience with a person that you could have, there was a solution.
Me personally,
in there
you
as well.
mean, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
'Cause I mean, I have these situations, and I'm not nearly as experienced as you as far as in the shows. So
Well, I mean, I always try to make the best of things. You know what I mean? I don't want to, especially with the guys that I work with. And if I respect them, that's a big thing. You know, because being in a band is like being in a family or being in a marriage. You all have to respect each other.
Yeah.
You know that. You know, all you guys that are watching, you'll know this too. That you all have to get along. It's harder than a marriage or harder than a relationship with a man or a woman because you all have to get along, right? And sometimes people, the egos get in the way and stuff like that. You know. And I've worked with a lot of musicians that are really super cool. Like just, come in, do the job, kick butt, see you later. Then you got some guys that are sort of, average players or good players and their heads are just, and you just have to learn to deal with that kind of stuff, bite your lip sometimes and just go, yeah, and, vent about it later to your buddy or, whatever it is. But probably a couple of years ago, I was a band that I still play with today, and there was an issue with the guitar player where he would, in the middle of the song, come and grab my drumsticks and like start playing on the drums in the middle of the song. Like he'd put his guitar down and just start playing on the drums. And the problem was that sometimes the stages were so small, he'd come and he'd be like knocking stuff over. And of course, I love my drums; they're all high-end stuff, and I don't want stuff getting banged around. And he's like banging cymbals into drums, and I'm like, don't! Like I'm trying to be professional on stage, And he's like hitting all the stuff, and he starts hitting the side of the shell. And I thought, okay, hold your breath, but on the break, I'm gonna let him have it. This is crazy. So we finished the set, and we're down in the green room, and I said, dude, don't ever do that again. Please, please, please. Oh, why? What's wrong? And I said, I said, this is my gear. I don't want, I don't hit your guitar with my drumsticks.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want you to hit my drums with your drumsticks. And he was cool with it, and I wasn't being, like at first I was kind of seeing red about this. I had to go outside and cool off a bit. And then I came back and went, okay, I said, dude, I get it that you want to play drums, but you don't do that. That's not cool. I'm not going to get up and start hitting your guitar with the drumsticks. So, but you deal with it, and then people are cool with it, because our last drummer didn't mind that. I said, yeah, but your last drummer had a $500 drum set. I got a $5,000 drum set. There's a difference, So, so little things like that. But in most cases, that doesn't happen often, though. That's the thing. I mean, dealing with personalities of people. There's all kinds. There's definitely all kinds, and. Sometimes you just smile and wave, and sometimes it has to get dealt with. And the reason I did that because it wasn't the first time this had happened. This is probably like the fourth time, and I thought it was just getting worse. That's the only problem. I thought something's gonna get broken. I don't want anything to get broken on my drums.
So what's the drummer's role in a live band situation?
In a live band, well, obviously you've all heard this, but to keep time, you definitely got to keep time, keep the energy there. If the song is a song that's going to get people dancing and building energy, right? Then you got to make sure the energy is there. But you also got to look like you're having fun, especially on stage. There's nothing worse than watching a boring drummer. We've all seen really cool drummers and guys either with really big drum kits or even the guys with small drum kits doing stick tricks or just looking like you're having fun, But to me, we're the foundation to hold everything together. We have to hold it all together. One thing that I hear a lot is, guys saying, well, our drummer didn't have good time. And I'll say, well, how good is your time? Because I want to make sure that the guys that I'm playing with also can play to a metronome or a click. They shouldn't just rely on the drummer. I mean, when we were first learning, that's fine. But for me, I was always playing with players who were experienced and had either played with good drummers or had practiced with a metronome or their teachers got them playing with a metronome. So it's not just the drummer's role to play time perfectly, everybody should be that mold. But really, it's funny because you think about this. You take a play-along track and play the band, and then mute the drums. It's like the bottom of the airplane just fell out. The plane's going to go down, right? So we're really the foundation, the meat and potatoes, holding it together. Like I said, with that that other gig I did where the bass player got fired, no bass, all of a sudden it was like, whoa, what happened there? But imagine no drums in a rock band.
Yeah.
You know, so to really hold it all together and to keep the energy up, keep the dynamics. We can control the dynamics big time.
Yeah.
If I start playing real soft, everybody else better start playing soft.
Yeah.
I start playing loud, but don't speed up and don't slow down unless you're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what advice would you have for a band looking to make it? Like to get a record deal or to play regularly, tour?
Yeah, practice a lot, get your tunes together, make sure you guys, you know, it's funny because everybody wants to have a sound,
Yeah.
right? They go, well, we have to get this sound. And I think there's a lot of bands that are following suit with so many other bands that already have that sound. And it's like they're just getting in line for the same cup of water. It's like, well, wait a second. It doesn't hurt every now and then to try something brand new.
Yeah.
Because I think, especially now, this is just me talking, but I think the world is ready for something big and new. Like,
Yeah.
I think we've heard so many things with these genres of rock and pop, the way they've been going over the last 15 years. It doesn't hurt to try something new, you know, and I love hearing those different kinds of bands. Even like, you know, Sublime or Sum 41, those kind of bands just have a different kind of vibe to them.
Yeah.
System of a Down, if you're into rock, just something that was different. And obviously, you know, learn your stuff, know your songs, but get out there. Go to open mic nights, go to open jams, record a little CD, 3-4 song CD, get it out there. You know, social networking, social media, whatever it is, let people know who you are. But because you can't just be a band and stay in your basement forever.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could tell you a whole story about Maroon 5, how they started off playing in front of 14 people a night. You know, look at them now. You know, and it takes a while. Patience is a big one. So the biggest thing that I think has to you have to understand with the band. There was a band that I was in that almost made it big, but the guys were so hungry to be rich and famous today that they had no patience for, well, there's steps, right? And they just wanted to jump to the top of the mountain. And then when they saw that there wasn't this leap happening, everybody quit.
Yeah.
It's like, well, when you quit, you're done, right?
Yeah.
So lo and behold, I'm the only musician in that band since 1995 that still plays an instrument.
Yeah.
It's too bad. Those guys were good, you know.
So if you could, I guess not even looking at the band thing anymore, but if you could look at your career, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now?
Not a lot different. I might have moved to a bigger city at the time. Now nowadays it's not quite the same, but back in the 90s, like early 90s, I went to New York City and I hung out there for 5 weeks, and I thought about going back there and staying for a while. I think I would do that. If I can go back in time, I would have done that. I was going to go to PIT back in the early 90s as well, in LA, just sort of hit the LA scene and try it. I mean, now it is much more difficult, but I probably would have done that as well, you know. But the thing is, the reason I didn't is because my career was taken off, you know, and I didn't want to, like, you know, something that's so tough to get into as it is, and say, well, I'm going to stop here and try to start over here when this has already got some foundation being built. So I would try that to see what different route it was, but I have no complaints right now with what I've been doing. I can't complain.
Yeah. So from a drummer's perspective, is it important, if you want to play shows, especially top 40, and play with a bunch of different bands like you have, is it important to specialize in a certain style of music, or is it more important to be able to play, you know, be mediocre at all styles? Or because I guess what I'm trying to say is not everyone can be good at jazz and as good as they are at jazz, they are that good at Latin and
Why
that
not?
good at rock.
Why not?
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying generally when you see a drummer like one of your favorite drummers, Neil Peart.
Peart, yes.
Peart, sorry, yeah. He can play jazz, but if you say what is he best at?
Yeah.
He's best at, you know, what he does with his rock drumming. And And so, what would you say? Is it important to specialize or?
Well, versatility is everything.
Yeah.
Because in this industry now, like for me, geez, like you've seen me play jazz and Latin and funk and metal and Rush and whatever, you know, drum and bass, and I love that stuff. It's just because it's playing the drums. And keep in mind too that if you're just the rock drummer, you're just getting the rock gigs.
Yeah.
If you're just the jazz drummer, you're just getting the jazz gigs. you know, and I heard a quote on a Buddy Rich video years ago where he said, you know, he goes, a drummer should be a drummer. You should play everything. I mean, even though he specialized in one thing, he could play everything. You know, he could play country and he could play funk and all that, but he became, you know, this anomaly of what he was.
But would he have played metal? Because metal wasn't even
I don't
created
know.
then. Would he have played, like, got a double bass kit and learnt that style? I have trouble believing that.
I don't. I think he was just, I don't know. I think that if he would have done it and put his heart into it, he would have just kicked butt.
Yeah.
But you look at, you know, look at drummers like Steve Gadd. Steve Gadd was a big influence to me. And then hearing Steve Gadd play with Chick Corea doing jazzy Latin, then hearing him with Steely Dan doing cool kind of pop, and then Eric Clapton, and then Michalkow, and all these different players, and going, wait a second, this guy can do anything, right? But anything in the sense of music that was popular, I guess you could say, or recordable. But keep in mind too, if you can play all those different styles, you're just going to get better gigs, right? You'll get better gigs because the biggest thing was, and some people laugh, they go, oh, you played on a cruise ship. Hey, I had debt. I had to pay a student loan. I had to pay car payments. I needed money, and I didn't want to go and work at Burger King. And so I thought, okay, well, let's go get a tan and play drums on a cruise ship. Why not? And the first thing they said is, the guy says, how many styles can you play? And I said, well, several. He says, name them. This is on the phone. I'm on the phone. This is right before the internet yet. And I said, well, you know, rock and funk and Latin. And then he says, well, what about, you know, if you had to sit in with a mariachi band, could you do that? Oh. And I'm like, lying, yes. You don't want to say no, because I'm thinking, I've got a week to learn this, man. I'll figure out how to play mariachi drumming. You know, but it was stuff like that is, the biggest thing was, you know, just more gigs. Because like I said, I have played in every situation. You know, I have done, and there's probably a picture floating around the internet somewhere of me doing a German gig wearing lederhosen, you know, and hey, it was a Canada Day gig, and the money was good. I've done an Elvis tribute. I've done, you know, I'm about to join a CCR tribute. There's all kinds of different things that are happening, but you need to know those styles because, especially if you're going to teach, it just broadens your horizon so much. Because I had one teacher that only taught rock. And that was great. But then when I wanted to learn jazz, he goes, oh, I can't help you. I was like, oh. And I wanted to stay with him, but he's like, I can't help you. I'm like, oh, man. So, yeah, learn them all. Learn them all.
I guess that's kind of the predicament because there's obviously the argument for specialization, especially in a very, very competitive market when there's so many people trying to do it. But then the same way, you know, look at someone like you who's been successful in knowing so many different styles. And, but yeah, I don't think there's maybe a black and white answer. I think it's tough to say, but yeah, you raised some very, very good points. So, let's get to some more practical stuff about playing shows because I know I put a poll out a while ago and I asked how many of you who they're following me, how many of my students, I guess online, following me want to play drums for a living, and I was like over 50% said they want to play drums for a living. Cool. And there's like, you know, I think over 500 people answered the poll, and so that's a pretty huge number.
Of all ages?
Yeah, all age. I don't know exactly, but so that's I want to get to some practical stuff about like how much to charge. And so if you were to give out your rate, if someone said we need you to do this cover gig, 40 songs, wedding gig, what's your rate?
You know, it's funny is people ask this all the time, and my answer is always like, what's the budget?
Yeah.
Because 20 years ago it was $100 a gig, plus a meal, plus whatever. Nowadays it's the same. Hasn't changed. Minimum wage for musicians hasn't gone up. So there's a limit, okay? And now what I do is I always depend how much work's involved. That's the biggest thing, how much work is involved. So I can't just give a flat answer. Same with a recording session. And when I say what's the budget, because if I give a rate, let's say that they wanted to pay me $400 and I said 200. Oh, we'll pay you 200, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, if they said it's 400, okay, I'll take it. You see what I'm saying? Is you kind of got to sort of feel it out. But, you know, you don't want to undercut yourself. There's a lot of musicians that do that and they go play for nothing and they make very little money and then they can't afford anything. They still live at home when they're 30 years old. Nothing wrong if you have to do that. But, you know, for me, I left home at 20 and all of a sudden life had expenses. right?
Yeah.
And you know, when I first started doing some small touring, it was like 150 a night, 4 or 5 nights a week, which was more money than I was making at my full-time job playing drums. And they'd give you a place to sleep, and they'd give you a couple of meals or a few beer tickets or whatever it was. As time went on, things start to change a little bit. You know, okay, no more beer tickets and no more meals,
Yeah.
and we're not going to pay you 150, but we'll pay you 100. So right now, a lot of the gigs around Vancouver are $100 a man.
Yeah.
And people go, wow, you play for that? You know, sometimes that's what it is, you know, and if it's more, great. But when someone says there's a gig and it's 3 rehearsals and $60, I say, sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Because that's just, to me, it's not worth it. I've put too much time into it. It's like anybody who knows they're worth something. If I'm going to hire somebody to come paint my house and they want to charge me $500, and I say, well, I'll give you 200, they're probably not going to do it, you know.
Well, because they base it off of an hourly rate.
Exactly.
And which is, if we as drummers did that,
We can't.
why? Because
Well,
that's one of the questions I actually skipped it. Is like, why do drummers undervalue
We'll
themselves?
make like $3 an hour. Because you think about it, learning the music, that's the biggest thing too. So when I say to these guys, how many tunes? Okay, we're gonna do 30 tunes. Holy cow. Okay, so 10 sets, 3 sets, 10 songs each. And they're all originals. I don't know them, so I gotta learn them. Then I might have to chart some out. Then I gotta practice them. Then we might have to rehearse. Then we got to go do the gig. The gig is the end result, $100. Some people would go, yes, I'll do it. I've been doing this a long time. I might say no to that. You know, if someone said, what would it take to do that? I'd say, can we do 250? Oh, that's way too high. What can you do? Well, we can do 175. And I think about it for a second. How many rehearsals? 2. What if I do 1? Okay. You know, so you got to kind of negotiate, especially now. At one time, there was a rate. There were things you could say. I would get called for sessions that would do $600 a day.
Yeah.
You know, and regardless of whether it was a 4-hour day or a 10-hour day. So it would work out to $60 an hour, 60 to $100 an hour on average. Now it's a budget thing, you know, because I got guys that'll say, well, can you come and do this session for $200? How many songs? 10. Yeah, I like the look there. $20 a song. And, well, this guy will do it. Well, maybe you should call that guy, because that's, once again, it's work, and then you got to, you know what I mean? It changes. So the biggest thing is I always find out what the budget is. Say, what's the budget? Okay. And if you can work within that budget and it's reasonable for you, it's like any job. If someone wants to take a job, say I got a job at a car dealership, and they say, we're going to pay you $50,000 a year. Okay, how many days a week? 5 days a week, 9 to 5. Someone might say, hey, that's cool. Hey, we're going to pay you $40,000 a year, but you got to work 7 days a week, 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most of my friends that would do that wouldn't do that. So it's like anything. It's like, you know, the reality is, you know, it's got to be your worth. And you can't put an hourly rate. As much as we'd love to, there's so much competition now, you got to get out there and find out what you're worth. Don't undercut yourself, and don't overprice yourself.
Yeah.
Some guys out there I know charge $7,000 a day. They don't work.
Yeah.
Nobody can afford that.
Yeah.
I wish I could charge that.
So you don't have to tell this if you don't want to, but what's the most you've ever been paid for a single gig?
A single gig?
Like one gig, one off. Well, it can be one off, or it can be like you were with a band and you had this.
One
really...
off was $4,000.
Wow.
Yeah. It was one gig, but it was over 3 days. It was 5 shows with Ruben Studdard, with John Cameron in Edmonton.
Yeah. That's I said gig or two. Or nice.
Yeah, I mean, but it was just one gig, because we had to learn X amount of songs, and awesome. You know, in front of 2,500 people, 5 sold out shows, 12,500 people, and you're treated like a king. And whenever I work with John in Edmonton, it's just, John's a good friend of David Foster's, so he is able to get David's guys in, and he pays well. But he treats you well. He flies you in, puts you in a 5-star hotel, feeds you all kinds of stuff, gives you a per diem, you know, and then you get a check for $4,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I want some full-time ones of those. Yeah.
So what's the most, maybe this leads into the next question, like what's the most efficient way to get gigs, and to maybe try and get those kind of gigs as well as just the other ones? Because I know a lot of people, to even get paid $100 to $200 to $300 a night would be great.
Sure. Well, get to know people. Get yourself out there. You know, market yourself like crazy. You know, I love it when a lot of pro drummers that I know all the pro drummers in Vancouver, and they go, man, we're always seeing your name out there, man, on Facebook and wherever else, on Twitter. I said, I have to. I got bills to pay, because you know the phone isn't going to keep ringing if I just sit back on my couch and flip through the channels, right? So if some people are getting sick of hearing my name, okay, fair enough, they can delete me. But there's going to be new people that are going to go, hey, I've heard about this guy. Maybe we should hire him, and that's still what happens. So I have my network of guys, but your network can always get bigger. I mean, you know that, right? And you always got to keep building that network because you never know who's going to want to hire you next. Or getting called for new students. I mean, right now I've got so many new calls for new students. Unfortunately, I have nowhere to put them. You know, it's like, ooh, I'm just running out of time here. But you got to get out there and meet people, you know, and have a great attitude. You can't. It doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, you're as good as you are. That's just the way it is. And you're going to go and do your gig, and people are going to love you for your personality and for your attitude. You know, that's why I get a chance to work with John Cameron. They're all from Edmonton, and they fly me in. And I'm thinking, there's better drummers in Edmonton than me, and I know most of them. And John hires me simply because of my attitude. I can't play drums at all, but no. No, the thing is, obviously I can read, and I don't complain. I do the gig, I prepare. Like, I'm at the rehearsals, ready to go. It's like it's show day. Rehearsal day for me is show day for me.
Yeah.
You know?
A lot of times that's more important.
Oh yeah, I've rehearsed to rehearse.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a big one too. But I never go in there going, you know, you're working with top-notch production crews. These guys are the best, and you make friends with everybody. You don't want to kiss butt. I'm not a butt kisser, but you just go and you make friends with everybody, and you know, and you just get to know, you know, what is this guy's job? What is this guy's job? You know, cool, man. You know, and I love it next year when they go, Mike, what's up? And I'm going, you know, somehow they remembered me. Unfortunately, I don't remember them because they're behind the scenes or whatever it is. But then I go, right, you're Mark. You're the dude from this sound company. Oh, how are you doing, bud? And they remember you. So that's the thing, is you got to leave a good, everlasting impression. But yeah, don't be a jerk. It's so easy to get caught up into that, you know. And then when people do that, it's just like, it just puts a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and they won't call you back, you know. Yeah.
So what's the when you go to a gig, what's the one thing you never go without? Like, even if they have a drum set there for you.
Oh, my stick bag.
Yeah.
My stick bag, and usually my pedals.
Okay.
Oh, and my seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Gotta take care of my butt.
And let's say you do bring your kit.
Yeah.
And there's like multiple bands playing. Will you let that another drummer play your kit?
Sometimes, yeah. You know, I mean, I like to get to know them, or, you know, there's been times where, see, if I go do that, I'll take one of my less expensive kits, obviously, like take like a stage custom or something, and it's not that big a deal. I mean, as long as they're not rolling them across the stage. I mean, drum heads can be replaced, and, you know, I've got a drum head endorsement, so I'm not too worried if guys dent the drum heads, and, you know, but my cymbals are a little more personal to me. And so if some guy says, you know, we're playing a night where there's three bands playing, can they use your kit? I'll be sure. You know, if the guy wants to use his own seat, I usually try to, like, make sure they got their own seat, you know, because change the height and all that stuff. I don't want to start changing the heights. Pedals are fine, but just don't adjust my pedals. Cymbals, if they can bring their own cymbals. So I'm pretty okay with that. But, man, I haven't been to a gig in a long time where I've had to share the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah,
usually it's just me up there. Or if I go play at places like the Yale in Vancouver, those places, there's a kit there already.
Yeah.
But they don't have cymbals there. So they just like, you got to bring your own cymbals. And they got a drum seat on there. I don't know who's been sitting on that thing. I'm going, I'm bringing my own seat.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for doing this.
No problem.
Final words. I know for the guys watching, like I said, there is a lot of people out there who want to do what you do.
Yeah.
And so, any final words of advice to give them? Just go ahead and.
Okay, so the thing is, guys, you need to remember these three things. The word PRO, which is prepared, P. R is reliable, and O is on time. On time, you have to be early to be on time. And obviously, prepared speaks for itself. Make sure that you're ready for the gig. Make sure that you're, you know, like, prepared is being ready, obviously, right? Yeah. Reliable, can these guys rely on you to show up, to know the music, to make sure you don't miss your plane or miss your, you know, your ride to the hotel or wherever it is. And then on time, obviously, speaks for itself. That's a big one, you know. Attitude is everything. If you guys can go in there with a good attitude, and even if there's somebody there that maybe you don't get along with, or an ex-girlfriend or whatever, you know, just smile and be, hey, what's up, you know, and that's what it is. But make the best of it. You always look like you got to have fun, and you know, they'll call you back. That's the biggest thing, is getting called back for the gig. That's always my big one. And if I don't get called back for a gig, I usually like to find out why. Not, how dare you? It's like, what did I do wrong? What can I do to fix it? You know, and sometimes it's just been maybe I wasn't the right drummer for the gig. You know, maybe I didn't have the correct feel, or maybe my fills were too weird or out of time or something.
Too many 30-second
you know,
notes.
what's that?
Too many
30-second notes on the feet. No. You know, learn to play with a metronome. Always, always, always. So you can do studio work. You know, learn to work with producers. You know, guys like yourself, you know, drummers and producers. Just get to know everybody and network and let people know who you are. Don't get your head too big in the clouds, because you never know what's going to happen someday. It could just lead to something even better for you guys. But you know, take every opportunity you can. Every gig that's out there, jump on board. It may be a great gig. It may not be a great gig. If it's a sub gig, prepare yourself to the point where you're like the other drummer. And, you know, don't be like, well, I'm not him. Well, be him that night. You know, be him that night, and just have fun. The biggest thing is, I say that so often, is you got to have fun when you're playing drums, and just learn to love everything about the instrument. Tune your drums, bring your drums. Don't forget stuff. You know, make an inventory list of gear that you got to bring. Make sure you got your notes, all your sticks in your stick bag, and all that kind of stuff. So that would be my advice to you guys. You know.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Jared. I appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
I hope everyone's
right on.
learned a lot from Mike and some of the insights that he shared. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you again soon.
Good luck, everyone.